The NVIDIA flow from last week is absurd. I haven't seen flow like this in a long time. This is like GME AMC type squeeze flow that we're seeing here. Just look at all of the bullish prints. Some of these calls are super far out the money, like 8-10, but every time they've been buying super far out the money calls, like when we were back in the 500s, they've hit every single time afterwards. So it is absurd to see this far out the money, the amount of premium, like this is a 2.6 million and premium 1.3 million. And this is just from Friday alone from last week. So it's really insane to see this type of bullish flow continuously hitting the tape, especially since the beginning of the year. And it's also warranted because look at how much we are up since the beginning of the year so far. If you just use a simple ruler tool here, you can see we're all the way up 52% so far just this year within the past 5 or 6 weeks. So a really insane rally and breakout from this previous consolidation. And also it closed super bullish last week too. So it's likely, even if we see a dip this week, that it's going to have a little bit of continuation up from here, and that's what these bulls from Friday are betting on. So really insane overall. And if I scroll through all these, you can just see a lot of these prints, like 2.5 million in premium, 1.2 million in premium. These were out the money at the time. They ended up going in the money by quite a bit by end of week, and they've just been hitting the tape constantly with this bullish flow, and it's been constantly hitting in terms of that strike being satisfied. So really insane to see all this. And also there's been a lot of put sell orders. These people are attempting to benefit on the heightened IV, that's implied volatility of these options. So over here we saw a lot of put sells, and you can see it's a put sell just based on it being either at the bid or below the bid. Plus these were opening orders because the volume is over the open interest. Prints like these are also very bullish because they don't expect that much of a drop, at least between the time that they sold and the expiration. In this case, it was a very short-term expiration, only February 23rd. So these are bullish as well, and they also had quite a bit of premium behind them. So a lot of bullish emphasis on NVIDIA. And basically just what we're seeing right here, like I said, if we do see a dip this week, it's likely to get bought up, as crazy as that may seem, because it seems like it is super overextended. Of course, it is overextended by any type of technical measure. But if we go to the 15-minute chart over here, looking at some of these dips, if you remember from a previous video, I referenced this 600 level over here. Obviously, that's an arbitrary hold number, so it's going to be important for a support or resistance. But this is a key level that basically is giving us bias in the macro picture. So as long as we stay above 600, just based on technicals, it's likely to have a lot of these dips get bought up in the short term. And that's what we've seen so far, continuously getting bought up. And if we do see some type of a dip this week, I am looking at around, if we go over to the horizontal ray tool, I'm looking for around this range here, around this 693 to 700-ish range. And actually, instead of using the horizontal tool, it's probably a little bit better to use this rectangle because this is a supply zone. You can see just intraday, we had a double top over here. Obviously, we continued up higher afterwards, but this just showed that there's some form of resistance. And because we cracked above it, above this zone that I'm drawing right now, because we broke above it, it's obviously going to act as some type of a support once it's retested in the future. In this case, it was retested twice as a support, as you can see on both of these days over here, and we bounced from there. So if we do have another retest, if there were to be some type of a dip, this is a good support zone. And not only is it a good support zone, it also is good in terms of risk reward, because if you were to add some type of call position, just long position in general, off of the top of this range around 697, you're only looking at about 4 or so points of risk, because under 693-ish would be a stop out. In this case, an hourly close under. So about 4 or 5 points of risk on a potential trade like this for a lot more continuation upside if it's able to hold. So again, not only is this a key support range, or at least demand zone, it also provides a good risk reward overall, because I don't want to be interested in adding any type of short-term dip buy if it is under here, because it has a little bit more room to go in terms of downside, likely to fill the gap over here that's remained unfilled so far. That's roughly around 661. So as long as it can remain above, we're going to see those short-term dips continue to get bought, at least intraday, and those are tradable dips as well. So again, if we do stay above, that looks bullish in the short term. If it does get below, that's when things can get a bit choppy. I'm not as interested in taking a setup. But again, like I just shared with that 600 level, that arbitrary hold number, as long as we remain above, we're looking at macro bullish picture for this. So obviously, we're really far above where this is right now, but this is just a general bias for the rest of the year as long as it remains above this level. So really insane rally, nonetheless. Obviously, there's been a lot of opportunity here on NVIDIA, and these traders over here in terms of flow have been taking every single one of those opportunities to add very bullish, as you can see over here, very bullish positions. So they've been benefiting quite a bit, and they're just going to keep hammering the tape until it stops working. So it's been working so far for them for a while now. So why stop what works? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's their plan for this right now. And whenever you see flow like this on any ticker, for that matter, it's always something you want to look into at the very least. Doesn't mean you have to take some type of a position on it, but over here, a lot of bullish emphasis, and it's been consistent day after day, and it has worked out in their favor. So I did want to share a little update there on NVIDIA. Another update I want to share is on Amazon here. If you follow the Twitter account, they posted this interesting trade, which I'll go to and show you. It's an interesting trade, not only because there was a lot of continuous prints that hit the tape, and actually have to go down and filter here. This is why I will bounce between 200,000 in premium and 500,000 in premium, because sometimes there are some key orders like the ones I'm going to show you here that are only 200,000 in premium. For example, these over here. Obviously, if you add all of them together, it's going to be well over a million and multiple millions of dollars in terms of premium. Obviously, if you add them all up, they're going to be multiple millions of dollars in terms of premium in this column here. But individually, which is what the filter takes into account, these are only $200,000 and $300,000 orders. But if you look at them all together, it definitely paints a different picture. So it's why it's good to always kind of change up the amount that you're filtering out here on Cheddar Flow throughout the day. And what we can see here is a lot of continuous sweep orders that are quite a bit out the money. 215 in terms of a strike, that's very far out the money, evident based on the price of these contracts. They were March contracts, so it's not like these are weeklies or maybe the next OPEX for March or something. These are a little bit further in expiration, but a very far out the money strike. They were picking on this, and these were fairly cheap options just because, again, there is a lot of risk when you're going that far out the money, regardless of the time horizon being a couple months out. So these were also all opening orders. You can see the size of these was in the thousands, and this was well over the open interest on that given day. The volume for the day was 72,000, a little bit over by end of day. So they were piling into these contracts. And what's interesting about this is after it was posted on the Twitter, we actually saw a drop intraday. So over here is when they bought them. You can see there was actually a spike during this time period. We actually can get the exact timing of this. Looks like 10:11 a.m. So that's Eastern time. You can see over here, roughly around where we saw this pop early on in the session is when they were buying it. And then we saw a dip. So they went negative a bit, a little bit later on intraday. But then the following day is when it had a major breakout, was able to get above 171, which is where it rejected on that previous day. And then it just soared to the upside and was able to close at 174 afterwards. So the spot price that they bought these was at 170, ended up going to 174. And those contracts are now up about 50% as of close on Friday. So these guys are certainly happy they were able to enter a position, ended up being lucrative for them. And also, it wasn't like they timed an exact bottom. There definitely is some holding range that they were comfortable with because, again, the open interest was still very heightened by end of day. They were holding it overnight. They're able to do well off of those, and I would not be surprised they continue to hold those as well, just because it had a very bullish close on not only the daily but also the weekly. And also, like I just said before over here, these are quite a bit out the money, so they're expecting a decent amount of upside from here. So similar to NVIDIA, whenever you see flow like this where it's just consistent and they're highlighted, like on here on Cheddar Flow, they're all highlighted because they're unusual orders, consistent amount of sweep orders with far out the money strike. In this case, a lot of premium behind them when you put them all together. These are definitely tickers you want to at the very least look into, because there's definitely something that these traders are interested in. Whether we can figure out what it is or not is up to your own strategies, but still these are interesting orders, and a lot of the time they do end up being profitable in the end. So other than that, the last thing I do want to mention is SPY. If we look over here at dark pool premium, there was actually an uptick last week, which is pretty insane to think about because of how high up we are right now, and it's been consistently high throughout this entire year. But we have over here a 3.3 billion in premium at the 500/127 level. So insane that we're already over 500 on SPY. This is quite a bit in terms of premium. Anything over 3 billion is definitely eye-catching, and this was from Friday. So we saw that come in on the last session. And then if you scroll down throughout the week over here, you could see a couple of mini ones like 1 billion, 1.6 billion over here. And if you scroll down, the larger one that we saw throughout the week was 6.1 billion. The 494.37 level. So between this print over here and this other print that's 3 billion at 493.96, this is going to give us a short-term bias. I can base a short-term bias based off of these levels here because it's only about a 40-cent differential for about 9 billion in premium overall, which is a very hefty amount when referring to signature dark pool prints. Not that common to see this type of premium within a short range of each other. So if I go over to SPY chart, we can see if we go to where this level was and mark a level, as you can see here, 494.37. Actually, it makes sense to do the 493.96 as well. So I can do that here, 493.96. So you can see very similar to NVIDIA, what I showed you earlier over here about this blue box. This is going to act basically the same way in terms of the short term. So as long as we remain above this box on NVIDIA, like I said earlier in the video, there's going to be a short-term bias to buying dips. The same is going to be the case as long as SPY stays above roughly this 493.96 to 494.37 range because of the amount of premium we saw in this tight range here. It's not like every single print can give you this type of bias. There has to be a certain amount of premium, ideally around 10 billion, along with it being within a tight range of each other in order for you to form a bias based on these. So don't just look at any type of signature dark pool print and think that you can base a bias off of those. That's not how it works. It has to fit a couple criteria like the ones that it fits here, and this can give us a short-term bias of a bid. So if we have a dip this week and it's able to dip, let's say even in the mid-range around the high 400s, or at the low end would be around this 494, as long as it remains above, we're going to continuously see these dips get bought. Eventually, and my expectation is sometime later this month, we will get below this level, and that will open an availability for a short opportunity. But until then, we will see these dips get bought up. And yes, we are heightened from here about 7-8 points from this range. So it's not like it's something that's going to happen overnight, but I just wanted to bring this to your attention in today's video because this will act as a key range going forward. We're going to retest it again, in my opinion, by the end of the month or so. And depending on the response from the market, that will determine where we will go afterwards. A bounce would be very bullish. We can see continuation, but a breakdown under will definitely put a pause to the uptrend that we've experienced so far. So just wanted to share that as well. And that's one of the beauties of using dark pool prints. A lot of premium behind these, which is always beneficial. And other than that, a lot to look forward to this week with OPEX on Friday, and as well as this aggressive uptrend in not only the S&P 500, but also some of these individual stocks like NVIDIA. It definitely makes for an interesting time in terms of trading. And I will see you guys in the next video.